Hi everyone, and welcome inside Mountain America Stadium for the SunDevilSource postgame show presented by Jones Auto Centers. Gabby Chernoff and Chris Cartman here following ASU's 34-15 win over Texas State. They rebound in a big way after that heartbreaker in Starkville last weekend. Chris, ASU really kind of narrowed its playbook. We saw some magic from Sam Levitt and Jordan Tyson, and Sam Levitt was really able to find a lot of other receivers as well. Was this the kind of rebound performance that ASU needed?
Yeah, it wasn't excellent, but I would say it was very good. The offense certainly was in a better rhythm, you could tell from early on in the game. And the defense, although not great against the run in spots, held firm when it needed to in a lot of situations and didn't give up the explosives that were concerning against Texas State. You put that all together, and that was a recipe for them to build upon moving into conference play. They're going to have to get better, but I think their understanding of their identity, who they're trying to be, the ways in which they can be successful with this group of players after losing some key guys from last year's team, I think that is starting to really sort of resonate with them, and they understand where they need to go.
And with ASU's offense today, this is something you talked about after that first NAU game, is the run game. They didn't quite establish it how they maybe needed to early. Tonight was quite the opposite. They did a really nice job of establishing that run game early. Sam Levitt was in a really nice rhythm as far as passing as well, like I mentioned earlier, able to find some other receivers. So just your thoughts on the offense as a whole today.
I thought they were a little bit too cute against NAU rather than just not caring about projecting to their future opponents the type of team that they were going to be, and being a smash mouth style football team was a mistake in that first game. And tonight they really were dialed into their identity. They made it easier on Sam Levitt, both by using his legs in the RPO and some of these easier read option kind of concepts, even a design quarterback run. They handed the ball off to Raleek Brown and Kanye Udo right from the get-go. They threw the ball on quick, easy type completions for Kamari Anderson, even, who we really hadn't seen a lot of, in addition to Shema Mateer, who had his career high in catches, and including that touchdown that he had, which was a tight end screen that was mostly after the catch, where he did a really nice job with that. Those are the types of things that make it easier for you to be able to get the ball to Jordan Tyson or others down the field. They missed on a deep shot to Jaron Hamilton that was just off his fingertips. We've seen a lot of that in practices. I thought they were ready to hit on that, very close. So yeah, just the broadness of everything that they were doing. Raleek Brown looked great. Again, he had 144 yards, and the 75-yard touchdown run, I think, was the game-deciding play, because it was right after the Bobcats had gone down and scored a touchdown, and the answer was immediate and pretty much ended the game. He's got a different sort of a gear than everybody else out there on the field, and that's a big thing. When Kyson Brown's out, we knew that their depth at the tight end position was great, and it was going to take a while to resolve that. So you kind of put all that together, and those are the things that are going to enable them to have more consistent offensive performances.
And Sam Levitt and Jordan Tyson, all eyes are on them all of the time. There's such high expectations surrounding those two. And if your eyes were on them tonight, you saw some magic happen. It was right behind us. Sam Levitt on his weak side, an off-balance throw to Jordan Tyson along the sideline. He's running. He evades a tackle by just hurdling the guy and takes it to the house into the end zone. Chris, what did you see on that? How does that personify that relationship between those two?
Quite well. Sam Levitt, that throw was very good, but it was so outdone by the job that Jordan Tyson did in that play. He had 4 steps that were barely inside the boundary, and he's just a special player. His ability to make these adjustments, his body control, even on other plays where he did the reverse pivot to get a lot of yards after the catch, his body control is really special. And he talked about having that play rated very highly, because you don't get a lot of opportunities to hurdle someone and score a touchdown. He had 100 receiving yards in the first half alone, including that touchdown. And so he was there. We knew going into this game there was going to be a lot of man coverage opportunities, because Texas State brings a lot of blitz pressure, and it's willing to take on some of those higher risk situations defensively. Levitt has the ability to make a lot of off-platform throws. He's a great athlete. There's an element to his game that is very difficult to manage for defenses because of that ability to extend plays. And I think he did a good job in this game in particular of extending to be a thrower when he needed to, not just tucking and running. He seemed more comfortable, even though he was under duress quite a lot in this game. He seemed more comfortable with what he was doing. And I think that goes back to the shrinking of the game plan and a lot of the things that they were able to do that put him in a better frame of mind going into this game.
Well, Texas State's head coach certainly saw all of that as well in his post-game interaction with Kenny Dillingham. He looked at him and said, that quarterback you have is unbelievable. And earlier this week, you mentioned kind of shrinking the playbook, shrinking the calls that they were going to make in this game. They started doing that, Sam Levitt and Marcus Arroyo, on Monday. How do you think that helped this offense really get into a rhythm and produce well tonight?
Yeah, one of the more perplexing things that has come out of Sam Levitt since he's been at ASU, I thought, was after Mississippi State when he said that he got away from a little bit being so dialed in on the game plan. I didn't get that because he's such a hard worker and he is so focused and so determined to be successful. It seemed like maybe something was getting lost in the sauce when you're also not then really dialed in on what you're supposed to be doing with your game plan. But I think that they perhaps got a little bit too optimistic about where he was at coming into the season, especially with a new center and a new running back. That changes a lot there. And so maybe they should have had a little bit simpler approach in the first couple games to build confidence. That's a little, Monday morning quarterbacking that I'm doing here about a quarterback. But nevertheless, I think that good offensive coordinators and play callers do a great job of understanding what a quarterback's comfortable with. And so Sam Levitt said today that he was expressing his perspective about what things he liked and didn't like that they were trying to build into the game plan. And Kenny Dillingham said that they shrunk things down on the call sheet by about 30% or maybe even more. And I think that was a very smart thing to do against an opponent like Texas State, where you're more than a 2-touchdown favorite at home. You should be able to just execute at a high level. And so their operation was much better overall offensively. Wasn't perfect. They still had some penalties that were costly, including things that maybe brought back some plays. And Levitt said that they left a lot on the board. Maybe they did. So they're going to have to still get even better. But this was something that got them into the right headspace to where they understand what they're trying to be and how and why, and that's what they can take moving forward.
And then on the defensive side of the ball, Xavier Alford came onto the field today for team warmups. He was not dressed, so Adrian Boogie Wilson got the start in his place. ASU's defense didn't give up any explosive passing plays. You asked Kenny Dillingham about it in the press conference, and he said it was awesome to see him step up like that. So what did you see from Boogie Wilson tonight?
Well, he's a physical guy who's got an infectious kind of a personality about him. And yeah, when Xavier Alford is the first-team all-conference player last year, he's super important. Texas State had done a good job with its quarterback connecting on off-platform throws down the field for touchdowns in its first couple of games. It put a lot of points on the scoreboard. So then you have a new free safety out there who had never done it for ASU, and you're thinking, okay, this is a vulnerability potentially that they might have. But man, they did a really good job of shutting down a lot of those big plays. Remember last week, they only gave up 5 explosive passes, but 3 went for touchdowns. We talked about them a lot on the podcast, in the postgame show, and they needed to do a lot better in that regard, and they didn't give up those things. Even when Sparks is a 10, 500-meter guy and they had some big play capability, there really wasn't anything down the field. So Wilson did a great job. He showed his toughness. He wears a shoulder harness. He had a big hit early on. I thought that between him and Miles Rouser and other guys, they brought a physicality to them in the game today that really carried through. He went out for a play after his first big hit with his shoulder, and then he came back, showed a lot of toughness and resiliency. I think that is a big part of what this defense is trying to be, that Jordan Crook and other players also personify. And not as good as they probably should be against the run in this game. I thought that was a little bit of a weakness. But the fact that they didn't give up those big plays, that's going to be a really big deal as they build into playing Baylor and some of these other opponents down the road.
And another thing that really personifies the identity that this defense is trying to build, you asked Boogie Wilson about, going in and then coming out and just going back in. Yeah. And his response to the question was, that's just football, man. We just play football.
Yeah.
But on special teams, Kenyon Floyd didn't punt the entire game tonight. Matt McKenzie came came in for him and said that Kenny Dillingham said there was just some quad soreness
Yeah.
for Floyd. So what do you make of that?
Yeah, this is why you add a second punter. Mackenzie came in from Australia. The expansion from 85 scholarships to 105 means that you got to put a little bit more emphasis on having some scholarship backups. Mackenzie didn't punt particularly well in his couple of opportunities. Fortunately for ASU, they didn't really need him to punt that well. Dillingham said that it's not serious regarding Floyd, so we'll see about his availability next week. Remember, the Big 12 requires for conference games to have an injury report, so it's going to be probably similar to the NFL. I asked Dillingham also about other players that didn't play in this game, Kyson Brown and Jalen Moss in particular, both of whom he said he thinks probably will play against Baylor, so they'll be listed as probable for that game, and we'll see what happens in practice. We're excited because it makes it a little bit easier to convey some of these things rather than seeing what's going on but not being able to necessarily talk about it all the time. That gets a little bit challenging. Mackenzie's going to have to punt Benner if they need him next week, and we'll see if Floyd's available and how much his quad injury affects things on special teams.
Now, looking at this ASU performance in a broader scope tonight, what positives can they take from this moving into Big 12 play, and what do you think they need to kind of build upon before heading to Waco next week?
Yeah, so I think I was a little bit surprised, and fans were probably surprised, that they didn't have a better idea about their identity going into the season when you have 2/3 of your starters back. But I really think that, especially on offense, because of not having their all-conference center, Leif Altanu, not having Cam Scadaboo, and then seeing exactly where Sam Levitt was at in his development, that allowed them to really sharpen and fine-tune who they are, what they're trying to be. We know that they added these tight ends that are talented guys. We talked about them being one of the more impressive groups in a long time, but they didn't really lean on them in the way that I thought that they needed to at the very outset of the season. They're now starting to kind of get that going. And then defensively, they're figuring out coverages, their pass rush. We saw Albert Smith come in and have a nice sack. Clayton Smith had another sack. I think he's got 3 this year. They had 5 sacks in this game, 10 or more tackles for loss. Keyshawn Elliott and Jordan Crook were flying around making a lot of plays. Miles Rouser, we knew that probably this opponent and other opponents would try to target in the passing game, both Miles Rouser and then whoever's at nickel, Montana Warner, Kendrick Breedlove, to see if they could exploit the things that Mississippi State was able to last year. That didn't happen, and so both of those things, I think, all kind of came together for them, and so there's a lot of things that you can look at from this game and take as positives.
Well, the Sun Devils will look to take all of those positives to Waco, where they'll face Baylor for the Big 12 opener of this 2025 season. We'll, of course, have you covered down in Texas. Until then, this has been the SunDevilSource post-game show presented by Jones Auto Centers, Gabby Chernoff and Chris Cartman. We'll see you next week.